Yes, we must again thank you for still being there. This is the Rock City 101.9 FM here in Abeokuta, the voice of the people. Citizens Forum, I mentioned this earlier. Yes, appropriately so. We are doing a review of the year 2017 with about 4 days and of course the last week for the year 2017. This morning we'll be looking at another critical sector, the economy. Only yesterday or a few days ago, in his end of year or Christmas message, the President Muhammadu Buhari agreed that 2017 to Nigeria for Nigerians has been tough and tumultuous. Yes, tough and tumultuous. So we'll be first, let me sum it into say 3 major ones. Chienye will give you a breakdown of some other details that we have drawn up here. That's where we're doing that. We'll be focusing on those areas that have been drawn up for you for the discourse this morning. Of course, the National Bureau of Statistics, that agency that keeps records for the country, told us that in 2017, rather than create employment, Nigerians 4.07 million Nigerians lost their job. That's just official record. Even though some people have also criticized them that they should also have given us details of, no matter how small it is, those who also gained employment for the year. I'm sure there will be some, no matter how small it is. But that's what they told us. 4.07 million Nigerians lost their job in 2017. That's one big story for the year 2017. The other one is the rate of inflation that just keep growing up, becoming uncontrollable and make things difficult. And of course, third and likely, many of you will be used to dollar T1. Well, somehow it's stabilizes. Really, I don't want to say it's been stabilized. It stabilizes from, I think it's about 350 as we see, but for the better part of the year, it went floating up, down, and then appeared to have stabilized to 360 and then 365, which is an improvement of how we began the year. These are the 3 main key things that actually translated the economy, the results of the economy in 2017. Dele Ayodo remains my name.
And I am Chienye Egwuonwu. Welcome.
Of course, we have an expert in the house, in the field. For us, he holds a PhD in what we are discussing. I think he was former chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria.
No.
Okay, a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, of course, fellow of the ICANN, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Dr Gbenga Adeoye, good morning and welcome to the Daybreak Show.
Good morning, my pleasure.
All right, Dr. Adeoye, I want your reaction on these 3 key areas. First, the NBS report of the year 2017 that we lost 4.07, that's about 18% of the population as a result of the harsh economic situation in the country.
Well, for the National Bureau of Statistics, they just told us about 4.something million, a little above 4 million. But you all know that we have the issue of database in the country. And so how do you authenticate these numbers? But nevertheless, whether it's 4 million or 10 million or 8 million, the implication is that when one person loses a job, 10 people are affected. The guy is unable to go out as he ought to go. There are people who depend on him. There are things that he wants to buy, he is unable to buy, and so patronage is affected in some marketplaces. Before, he used to eat 3 times a day. He's not going to eat 3 times anymore. So the market woman is affected, and that's one of the challenge of unemployment. But unemployment has a root cause, and that is the lack of industrialization in a nation. And before, from 2015, we had a crisis of exchange rate, and that led to closure of some companies. Those that didn't close up, they had the crisis of importation of essential raw materials for production. And if your production capacity is being cut down on a daily basis, then the best thing to do is to reduce the number of staff. That snowball into the crisis in the banking sector, where you are supposed to lend to somebody to expand, but your customer is unable to produce, and so you actually don't need the number of staff that you have in your payroll. So essentially, most bankers lost their job. Factories, they started closing down or cutting down their operation, and then people began to lose their job. That was a very serious crisis for the country, and of course it breeds insecurity in any nation when people are not employed. So that's about unemployment.
Before we go on, let's get this. Let's clarify. Is it that you don't believe that figure of the MBS, or you don't?
The issue, as a professional accountant, we are very careful in just believing figures, unless you are able to give proofs about how you arrive at this figure. You know, in mathematics, the result is not the issue, but the steps in arriving at this figure. So the responsibility that the NBS has is to give us, in the banking sector, we have 1 million people that lost their job, and then you give us a line item, Access Bank, GT Bank, Diamond, and all those things, and then journalists can go to verify, and the bank can either deny or accept this. So when you do that, then it shows clearly that you have done a thorough job, but nonetheless they have done something. I'm sure they have a particular details. It may not be accurate.
Okay, at least something to work on.
Inflation, you know, the word inflation has actually created confusion for a lot of people. You know, if you are addressing the economy, you look at the government and the private sector. For the government, you hear about unemployment rate, inflation, GDP, and the rest. To a common man on the street, he's not interested in what you are talking about. And so what you is asking, how much is it going to cost me to get a bag of rice, or to get a 5-liter vegetable oil, or a pack of juice? So when you are talking about inflation, we have to deviate a little bit from the technicality involved in inflation. So inflation is talking about increase in the prices of goods and services, whereas your income is not increasing, and so it becomes very difficult for you to afford those things. Towards end of 2016, a 50 kg bag of rice, 16, was going for 20 to 23,000 naira, and then that's quite huge, when rice was actually 6,000 plus before. And these, you know, you talk about every other commodities that are affected. So that's what inflation is all about: increase in prices of goods and services, whereas your income is not increasing. So you hear people complain everywhere. You can't afford what you want to buy, or you cut down on the quantity. So that's the practical effect of inflation. Then if we start talking about the economics, the indices, the index, and how to measure, people get confused. But for every human being on the street, you are concerned about what are you able to buy, what is the price, is it reasonable? And one thing that we need to get clear is that our country is import dependent. When a country is import dependent, exchange rate fluctuation affect the prices of your goods and services, and that's the crisis that we have in Nigeria. So because most times when I travel out of the country, I found out that most of the shops that you go to, what they've been selling for $10 in the last 3, 4, 5 years, you find it the same. You go this year, you find it the same. So the same product comes to the country, and so it's not as if prices of goods are actually rising globally as such. For example, motor cars. To get a particular car is at about 6 million. Today, those cars are about 17 million.
Yeah.
It's not as if those countries are increasing the prices, but because of our exchange rate problem. You are talking from 165 to 363 now. It stabilized from August till date at about 360, 363 in the black market. Of course, you hear 305, 306, 307 at the CBN rate, but that is not applicable to everybody if you are not qualified for Form M. So that's the crisis that we have, and it's going to continue unless we begin to focus on production locally, because if you depend on importation largely, you are going to have crisis once there is a change in the exchange rate. But what influences exchange rate is actually demand and supply. We are not generating income. We are mono economy, oil only. So if we can encourage export in Nigeria, then we have forex coming into the country, and then that is going to reduce.
Now, Dr. Adeoye, at the excuse me, at the beginning, no, at the end of the year 2016,
yes,
rice was sold between 7 to 8,000. At the end of the year 2015, it was 7 to 8,000.
Yes.
Now, at the end of the year 2016, it was sold between 17 and 18.
To 23, even to 23, depending on the grade of the rice.
Oh, yes. Now, today, the end of 2017, again, let me write, 2015, about this time, 2015, it was 7 to 8. About this time, 2016, it was about 18, 17, 18, 19. Today, it's about 11, 5.
It's between 10, 5 and 15,000 maximum.
Now, okay, that's a reduction.
Yes.
At least, like we said, from the market calculation. Hold it. Now, dollar again, at the beginning of this year, it was almost about 500.
Yes.
Today, officially, just talk about the official at 305.
Yes.
So, for those who are importing, they should be able to get from them and get solar sold for them for that figure. Why has this not translated into the prices in the market?
Well, you have a little translation, little effect. You just talk about rice. Rice in 2016 was going for between 17 and 23,000, depending on the grade. Now, as of today, you have 10,500 to
13
or 15, the highest grade. Now, largely, there was a program that was carried out in Kebbi State, between Lagos State and Kebbi State, which they call the lake rice. So you see the pressure on importation, and everybody say, oh, let's go for what we grow locally. They are doing something in Ogun State now, they call metros, and then everybody say, oh, if I can't afford this rice, I go for a father. So, and then people begin to say, look, it's not compulsory. If you can't afford it, you go for something else. But then the reduction that you have in the exchange rate is not affecting all the sector, because those that are importing, the dollar requirement is actually more than what is available. So they still go back to the parallel markets to get the forex, and they are getting it at 363, sometimes 400, even as we speak, you know, if you are looking for large volume.
So the banks are not giving large volume?
Because it's not enough for everybody. At least we have clients who have placed their request for months. And if you place your request for $1 and your raw material has finished in the factory and you don't get this in, then you are in trouble. It's either you sack all your workers, and if you have bank loan to pay, you are in trouble as well. Interest is going to be mounting up. So what most of them resort into doing is to try and find alternative, and that's going to the black market. So it's whatever you get, and that's what is affecting the petroleum prices that you talk about. You see some people, they tell you, I get it for 160, how do I sell? So the guy is selling at 170. So it's the cost price that determine your selling price. Yes.
All right. Chienye had some major economic headlines for the year, and then we want your reactions to these stories.
Okay, the very first one is on Nigeria's inflation rate, which hit 18.72%. The National Bureau of Statistics, that's NBS, says the Consumer Price Index, which is the CPI, which measures inflation, increased by 18.72% year-on-year in January from 18.55% was recorded in December 2016. And the CPI, which measures the average change over time in prices of goods and services that were consumed by people for a day-to-day living, was put at 0.17%, points higher from the points that were recorded in December. And then a report released by the MBS in Abuja also noted that increases recorded in all classification of individual consumption by purpose and the divisions that yielded the headline index.
So what do you make of this?
Yes, like I said earlier, when we talk of all these inflation rates, the consumption, the index, and the changes that you are having year on year, comparing 2016 with 2017, to an average individual on the road, he's not interested because he doesn't know the input into your calculation, and you are coming up with the result. But what has happened is that the changes that we have experienced in inflation between 2016 and now is as a result of some measures that have been put in place. There are pressure on individuals and corporate body to pay their taxes, so government was able to generate additional fund. Then when you look at the crude oil, the per barrel, the price, you know, it fell to about $29 at a time, and as we speak, even the budget of 2018 was prepared on $45 per barrel. So there was increase in revenue. So government is able to control, you know, to an extent, the flow into the country, and then they now place a ban. You know, they place ban on certain products. If you go to customs website, you will see a lot of products that are listed. And then after customs have done their own, the central bank also came up with another ban, and they said, this one, we're excluding you from those who can get forex. Now, some of it have negative effect because locally we have not been able to meet our demand. And for those who still want to consume those goods, that's what is bringing about the changes in the consumer price index. They still want to go for it. And so whatever they find in the market, they will still have to buy it at that price. Notwithstanding that the price has changed, it has skyrocketed, but there are certain things that they are used to. They want to go for it. So the little relief that we have on some of the products is coming as a result of increase in revenue. And then you will recall that the vice president visited the Niger Delta at a time and was talking to everybody, let there be peace. So production increased significantly. So we had more revenue, and then crude price went up. That's why our reserve is about $35 billion now. So it's not as if something extraordinary has happened. It's just that God more or less had mercy on us as a nation. But right now, if we don't address the Niger Delta, because the only product through which we get forex is oil, and if you don't produce, you can't get oil. So you will still be having this negative result on inflation, and then the thing will keep going up because people must still buy this, and everything you import respond to foreign exchange.
All right, your next story.
Okay, before we go on, when prices skyrocket,
Yes,
you find out that when things stabilize, the prices never come down, and people never get to complain.
Why is it so?
Why is it so?
well, that is, we need to build institutions in other countries. Another thing that we also need to encourage is competition. If we have a free market where there is competition, if things has changed, then you need to bring down your prices. But then you now have the government to come in. You know, in the past, you have the cocoa board, you know, in the days of the Awolowo. So they determine what price you can sell. There is a benchmark. You can't go beyond this threshold. So when people complain. You see the orange seller telling you dollar has gone up, and then when dollar moved from 500 down to 363, even in the black market, you see people maintaining the prices, and that's what we call abnormal profit. Now, the responsibility is on the government to come in and bring measures to change the scenario. And how do you do that as a government? Where you notice that people who are doing buying and selling, they are selling a product, say for example 10,000 naira as a result of inflation, and then you stabilize. Others, they're supposed to be selling at 7.5, and you notice they are making abnormal profit. You call them and warn them. If they don't listen, government comes up with intervention, and then you flood the market with that product and crash the price.
Yes.
In fact, you can sell at half. Do you understand? So I had rice being declared at 11,500. Now, when you hear that the product you are selling at 10,000, the government is ready to give it to people at 5,000, then you are in trouble. You will crash your price. So as soon as you do that, it can just be a single intervention. So we need the government to be concerned about the people, and then price regulation is very key. And then regularly you bring in these economic interventions. So, and then there should be task force people going to the market, get the real situation. What is this supposed to go for? What is the actual cost? What is supposed to be the price? Looking at storage cost, marketing, and the rest for them. And when you notice that they are becoming a cartel and they really want to inflict injury and pains on the people, then the government brings in this intervention programs.
Thank you. Okay, the next one, CBN communique number 112 of the MPC meeting. The Monetary Policy Committee met on the 20th and 21st of March 2017 against the backdrop of persistent uncertainty in the global economy stemming from economic and socio-political developments around the world. And on the domestic front, while the Q4 2016 GDP figure was better than the last two consecutive quarters, the economy remained in recession with inflationary pressures continuing unabated, and these adverse external and domestic conditions continue to complicate the policy environment. And in attendance at the meeting were 10 members of the committee.
All right, the question for that, the Monetary Policy Committee,
yes,
why is it necessary? Do we feel its effect? When I say to, because we want to be talking as a commoner, people, do we feel it? What's their job, monetary policy?
In fact, they are very key in the economy. Most of the problems that people in manufacturing are having can only be addressed by the true monetary policy. Fiscal policy generally deals with the entire economy. Then the monetary policy deals with interest rate, exchange rate, and the control. Take for instance the lending rate. What determines the lending rate is actually the policy of the central bank. And if they really want to help the economy, they need to come up with a cut down on interest rate, because you see people paying 22% open rate.
That's it. They are intervening, but it's still high.
Yes,
you still have so much difficulty in assessing loans.
That's why
because of the interest rate.
We need to go into practical steps. You have the BOI lending at single digits. The commercial banks, because the customers are the mercies of the bank. You need money to do your business. You know you are going to make profit, and the government is not working on them. Let me give you an example. In a commercial bank, if you place fixed deposit, they probably give you less than 7% per annum. The same bank want to lend to customer at 22%. That doesn't make sense anywhere in the world. And that's why globally you see the LIBOR rate control interest rate. The LIBOR is London Interbank Rate. If you go to US Exim Bank, they will lend you at 4 to 5%. If you go to other banks in the world, the rates single digit, and then they have rate on fixed deposit at about 3%. Here in Nigeria, I still don't understand what the central bank want to do about this. You place money in the bank, they give you 6 to 7%, and they are lending to you at 22. It doesn't make sense. Simple mathematics.
Yeah.
Whereas, where we have challenge is that the CBN is going to borrow from the public at about 15 to 17%. You see now, that's where the challenge is. So you see the commercial bank mop up their own money and customers' money and put it in treasury bill, get a better rate of 15 to 17%, and then they feel that the best way to lend out is at 17%, because there is no point giving you a customer money at 14 or 13% when the central bank is offering to give me, as a bank for example, 17 to 18%. So the CBN is actually indirectly causing problem for the people, because if the government is borrowing at 15 to 18%, you are not going to lend to Dele Ayodo at 10%. Impossible. Do you understand? So actually treasury bill is borrowing by the government. So government is paying a higher interest. So there's no way lending rate of commercial bank will be less than what you get at treasury bill. And that's where we have the challenge. For example, if they crash treasury bill rate to, let's say, 8%, then the commercial bank will say, look, I am better off if I lend to a manufacturer at, say, 12%. But federal government is giving me 15, 17. You will be a fool to go and borrow somebody money at a lower rate. And don't forget, there is no risk in the money you borrow the federal government, because the nation is a going concern. So that's the challenge that we have. And I think to change the economy of Nigeria, it does not require rocket science. So simple arithmetic. Treasury bill rate 15 to 18, and you are lending at 22. Just crash the treasury bill rate. Commercial bank will not put money there anymore. They will be looking for you to lend you money. And I tell you, there are a lot of ideas in our nation. Young people, entrepreneurs who want to do things, but there's no fund.
We'll come to why these ideas, these young people's ideas, are not being seen or not working. We'll come to that, but let's have the next story.
Okay.
Nigeria's domestic debt hit 19.63 trillion naira. That's according to DMO. Nigeria's public debt stock for both the federal government and the states as at June 30 stood at 19.63 trillion naira. The Debt Management Office said this. And then according to that report, it said the external debt stock of both the state and federal governments was 4.6 trillion naira, while the domestic debt stock of the federal government was 12 trillion naira. It also said the domestic debt of states stood at 3 trillion naira. And it also said the federal government spent 253.3 billion naira on domestic debt servicing in the second quarter of 2017. That was from April to June.
All right, that's half year, 19% domestic debt. By this last quarter, we don't know, but by September it has risen to about 26. Now, at a point in time, at the end of the Q3 quarter, I think the IMF and World warned us against this increased debt, both the international and the domestic debt, and warned us against the consequence that we should find a way of reducing it. Against this backdrop, and then it keeps increasing. What do you have to say? What are we feeling the consequence, or we feel it later?
I've said this severally in different places. Just like the Vice President said that spirit will not change our economy. Human beings have to take steps. Here is a country where our recurrent expenditure is on the increase every day. And one of the things that the government needs to understand is that it is not the duty of government to actually create employment, but to create enabling environment where cottage industry can rise up and then begin to employ the people. Now, do you know why we have to borrow? You have to pay salary. I'm sure you know that if they don't pay salary, there will be trouble in the country. So there is a need for us to actually review the number of ministries that we have with the federal government and even the states, all the states together. Because you discover that there are some people that are going to work, they are not doing anything. And there is a need for you to know the productive, strength of the people. And then let's have some people outside there to change the economy. So the domestic debt you are talking about, I think you 19 point something.
19.63.
That's at half year.
Yes, is actually the treasury bill that I just mentioned to you. You know why it will increase? The demand as at today, when treasury bill is offered in the money market, the number of people that bid is actually higher than what the government is looking for. And so our government, they're just enjoying the fund because they have to spend money. But if we are borrowing for capital project, fantastic. But if it's for recurrent, we will not move forward as a nation. So if our borrowing is for developmental programs, the effect of those developments will translate to more money coming in at the end of the day. Because when the environment is good, industries will come, companies will come, and then increase in tax revenue and the rest. So there's nothing you can do about this. Government will not get money to borrow if they crash the interest. And then we have to think of what to do about balancing our recurrent and capital expenditure.
Experts seek coordinated approach to tame inflation. The headline index seems to be moderating given the measures adopted by the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) to stabilize prices. But economic analysts believe a more coordinated approach incorporating fiscal measures would reverse the rising streak. The Consumer Price Index (CPI), which gauges inflation, further rose to 18.72% year-on-year in January, compared to 18.5% in the previous year.
You just talk about ideas of some young one. The story is saying experts, they are calling on a coordinated approach to fix this economy. We have what we call the economic team.
Yes.
The central bank, the Ministry of Finance, coming together, and of course the members of the National Economic Council made up of all the governors. This is the economic team of the country right now. So which experts do we need? Where are we going to get the experts from?
Well, there's a Yoruba proverb that says you cannot shave a man's head in his absence. Have you heard that proverb before? Yes. So that's the challenge that we have in Nigeria. One of the principles of good governance is participation and inclusiveness. Where you want to change the economy of any nation, you need the private sector. You can't do anything outside the private sector. So it's like shaving a man's head behind him. We have three arms of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. These are representative of the people working for us. Now, you have the larger population. When you look at government, the number of people in government, they are very small compared to those outside. Then you need to sit down and say, you guys come here. How do we change this nation? Then we draw up long-term, medium-term, and short-term programs to change the country. For example, if you are a graduate, you study agriculture, and then you want to grow tomatoes, what do you want us to do for you? You call experts from University of Agriculture and say, we need 1 million people to grow tomato for us. Do we have them? Can we have the list? What do they need? You sit down with the government. They need land, they need farm implements, and then money. And then you say, look here, we are going to release this money to you. You are not going to pay anything. You are not going to pay back now. When you finish your harvest, there's a program like that in South Africa, where they gather the people, release the money to them. When you finish, after your harvest, then we will deduct all that have been given to you as input. Don't you think that will change the nation? But if you don't sit down with somebody, it's like a doctor looking at you and say, you look sick, I think I'll give you paracetamol, without asking you, what is wrong with you and what do you need. So private sector is actually key to the development of any nation. The government, you can't even make a meaningful policy unless you carry the private sector along. And this we have said severally. You call the commercial banks, what's wrong with you? Why are you not lending to our people? For instance, a young graduate, where is he going to get collateral? He has not bought land, not to talk of building a house. And you are saying...
He does not even have a job, he has not worked.
And you say all loans must be collateralized. And even the BOI is saying loan that is up to 10 million. If you buy a generator, big generator of 6 million, how much is left? So you're in trouble. So we need to sit down with the private sector and say, we really want to change this economy. What do we need to do? What do you want us to do to you so that you can lend at 8%, 9%, as we have it in other nations?
Quickly, Chienye.
Okay, quickly before we take the break for the national news, made in Nigerian products will help grow economy with Aba products. What will please President Muhammadu Buhari more than seeing Nigerian troops fully clad in made in Nigerian uniforms, weapons in hand and going about their duties? And this has been made clear from the outset that his administration favored locally made goods in order to grow the economy and win the country of a culture of dependence on imported products. And soon the army responded, visiting Aba, home of enterprising shoemakers, the textile producers, fabricators, and makers of almost anything the mind can conceive.
Okay, now I got interested in that story, Dr. Adeoye. Aba, I want it to just symbolize locally produced goods. But are they good enough to help turn the economy around? We just talk of enabling environment. Are all those indices strong enough to help local manufacturers turn around the economy and we begin to place imported oil sector at the background?
Well, let me just correct you. You can't place oil sector at the background. Oil is key. You need to drive your car, you need to drive your machine. We are not.
A lot of countries are moving away from.
Well, we are still far from that. Even in Europe, where they are talking about this electric car, But leaving that aside, to change a nation is not only one policy, but fantastic. That policy of patronizing the Aba people. I commend the presidency and whoever advised him to do that. But when I review production process in most clients' offices, I discover that most of the things that we produce locally have input of production imported from overseas. Maybe you don't have enough leather, the sole, and all those things that are being used. So I think we still have a lot to do on our rubber plantation. We need to increase that so that we can get to a level where we can be self-sufficient. If you go to India, you will be amazed with their population, the kind of machines that are produced in India. You go for their exhibition, you will be amazed. So there is a need for us to have these aggressive policies, multifaceted, not one. You understand? Because the guy you want to patronize is going to get to a time that he cannot even meet your demand. And believe you me, the Nigerian army will get angry one day and say, Mr. President, we are sorry. We cannot wait for these people because he's unable to meet up with the demand. And that's what is affecting the rice market, actually. Ofada is very sweet, but the volume we are producing is not enough. And so that's why people still go for imported rice. So if we increase the upland rice production and you have large volume, then if what you're looking for, you can find it. So that's the challenge. What is the capacity of the Aba people? Can they produce? Do they have machine to roll out 1,000 boots at one point within 2-3 days? Do you understand? So if we still have manual production, then quantity, will be low. So we need a lot of aggression. Power is key. If you don't have power, there are certain production processes that you can carry out. So not only patronizing somebody, you just patronize and the things are few, the guy wants to increase the price because he doesn't have it in large volume. So we need more effort to be channeled. But sincerely, I commend that decision of the presidency.
Now, because we want to bring this quickly down to the people, let me quickly give you one example of this. The quality, apart from the volume, the quality of those things takes people away from purchasing these things. There is a spoon they sell. A dozen is 100 naira, locally made. And some people will come and say, this is a tokumbo. And one spoon is sold for 200 naira. I rather prefer to buy that 200 naira than buy the 1 dozen of 100 naira if you look at it.
Because of the quality.
With those spoons, first it can serve as a knife.
Yes.
Immediately you are totally breaking into two.
It peels your tongue.
So,
well, that's also part of the challenge, and that's where technology comes to play. And if you listen to what I said earlier, I talk about production process. The result of this poor production process is poor quality. And of course, because of our purchasing power in this environment, somebody feels that if I produce this thing and the price is so high, people, they will not want to buy. So that's the challenge. And so we need to increase on our production process, technology, training, technical education need to be improved upon, so that we'll go out and see the quality of product outside there and say, look, this standard, just like our governor in Ogun say, he will tell you Ogun standard. So they want to do drainage, they do concrete. So you can actually improve your standard.
Okay, the policy is a great one, but
Yes.
in Nigeria, we are after fire brigade approach. It's a good policy. Most times what they need to do is just sit back, plan on it, and see how this will be achievable before they even go into it.
Exactly.
Fire brigade. Okay, we'll need to take this break for the national news at 10, and then on the other side of 10, we'll continue on Citizens Forum. We are basically on the economy arena for today.
all right, yes, of course, we will continue to strive, search for everything, anything that will make Nigeria greater than what it is. We're already great, really, that's my belief. We are great. Now start to actualize that greatness in us. It's the problem. Welcome back. Daybreak Show, Citizens Forum on Rock City 101.9 FM. Yes, yes, yes. This is the voice of the people this morning, doing a review of the year 2017. How did it go? And we are looking at the economy. This morning we have an expert here with us. He has a PhD degree in economics, and of course a member of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Dr Gbenga Adeoye. Dr. Adeoye, before we open the lines, we talked so much of those events. In your own manner experience, how can we not transfer all this into 2018? I'm talking about doing this better.
Well, I think with the current move on tax awareness, the government is talking about a voluntary asset and income declaration scheme where everybody will pay tax. So in a way, that will increase revenue. But beyond that, we still need to sit down together, all of us, the private sector and the government. Because if you look at, like I said earlier, the general problem is that so many people are loaded with ideas. Intelligent people wanting to do great things, but they don't have the money. And so the banks want to lend at very terrible rates. And then they're asking for collateral from these people. Except we sit down together and call the banks and say, look, how do we get fund across to people to transform the nation? We may not, just like a research that was done in the US a few years ago, that the economy in the 21st century is not going to be the high-end product, like buying a caterpillar, an aeroplane, but it's going to come from small items. $1, 1 naira, 2 naira, 5 naira, 20 naira. And then you have this in various places in form of small and medium scale enterprises. But if you don't have money, there's no way you can do anything. And so that's critical. And then government focus on how to address power, which will stimulate the growth. So there is still a need to, I would suggest that the federal government should have an emergency economic group. Emergency one. They are not going to be there permanently. They just sit down together, call private sector, and then all of us will sit down and say, look, let's go this direction. Let's give it a try.
And possibly ensure that the recommendations are implemented.
I think it will be implemented. I think it will be implemented. More so, a pre-election year. You want to do what is right. You want to convince the people that you love them. So I think it will be implemented.
Okay, we'll open the studio lines now, 0809-868-7344. Oh, quite a number of tweets here. Adenekon Oluwaseun tweeted, poor economic planning and no concrete implementation of our economic planning is the major cause of Nigerian current hardship or recession. Please, sir, do you think this government can change that very act? That's the question from Adenekon Oluwaseun. He also tweeted again, ever since 1952, Nigeria's external debt kept rising from one government to the other. The external debt profile of Nigeria is currently getting out of hand. Any way out as an expert on economy, sir? It is unfortunate how most governments overlook the negative impacts of external debt and focus only on the positive. And more tweets still from Adenekon Oluwaseun. The negative impact of external debt on Nigerian economic growth hardly comes to the mind of the policymakers at the point of contracting the loan or borrowing to fund gaps in government revenue. It has become morality in Nigeria. How can we change this? Those are questions from Adenekon Oluwaseun. We have callers now. Hello.
Hello, please move away from the radio. Morning.
Mr. Dele and our guest, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Hello?
Okay, Big Daddy, go on.
Yeah, straight to our guest. Sir, if I may ask, are you a Nigerian?
Yes, I am.
One thing I want to ask again, are you aspiring for any seat in Nigeria?
Why do you ask?
Why come what you are saying? Our leader doesn't think. But when they go there, they have change of mind. What they did not even have having the masses in the mind. They're only thinking about how to pack this morning. Like one of my friends who said those people are not happy because they are going to worship their money. If anybody go across where they put the money, their mind will be shaking. So please tell us more because we want to hear about that more. Have a nice day.
Okay, Dr.
You too, Big Daddy.
Well, the question you ask.
Morning.
Okay, there's somebody. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, my sister evangelist.
Good morning. Thank you for calling.
Good morning. I'm Thank you from my doctor. Good morning, Dr. Gbenga.
Good morning, sir.
I greet you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't have much to say, but we all know that fuel has direct impact on the lives of the people now. No longer is anything seen so sustainable any longer. Look at electricity, it's not sustainable. Fuel also is not sustainable. Then it now is boiling down to issue of job security in our life. You see, most governors that we have of today have mortgaged their state workers. Especially if you go around now, you don't even find anybody that could be able to boast of, say, 50,000 naira in their account now. And people had kept rumbling over job security, yet none of these executive governors listened, probably let me put it, have listened to anybody in terms of economic growth. You see, the question I want to raise is this. I've raised this question sometime, but I have not gotten enough answer. In terms of this dollar, what you are talking about, dollar to a naira, can't the governor of central bank probably see reason why we can now begin to say, look, you Western nation, we are ready for our own economy. Let us take $1 to 1 naira now. Don't you think it could be possible now? And don't you think that subsidy matter most now? That people are now thinking that.
Thank you very much, Kaide.
Okay, that's your question. It actually defies logic in economics. exchange rate is not just fixed. You get your rate based on the volume you can generate into that nation. If you go to United Arab Emirates, it's about 3.5. You go to Ghana, it's about 3 to a dollar. Of course, I know they redecimated their currency. So you don't just fix it verbally or paper.
You don't sit down round table
yes,
and say this is
it's actually based on what you can generate that determine, because you have to control it with your forex as well. So I think that's the question really that requires answer.
Other issues somebody was talking about.
Yes, the other guy was talking about economic planning. Well, it's very key. If you look at the budget of 2017, we have not implemented appropriately. 2018 budget is yet to be passed, and 2017 is ending, and that is supposed to be for fiscal year 2018. So I expect that there is a need for all of our representatives and the senators to actually know why they are there. The budget for 2018 ought to have been passed in 2017, and then you can do your implementation smoothly. There will be no excuse for the executive if the budget is passed. So January, and then you do your medium, short-term, and long-term plan. We want to do this road in January. We want to build this healthcare in March. This we want to do in June. But if the budget is not passed, January, February, March, there are certain things you cannot do. Because unless you have the Appropriation Act, the executive, you will be doing what we call ultravirus, going beyond your boundary to spend. And they can call you to the Senate to question you. So there's a need for us to pass the budget, and that's part of the planning, which we have not been doing.
Okay, we pick up more calls. Hello, good morning. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning all of you and our resource person in the studio.
Good morning.
Yeah, to have Benson, I think I'm calling from the Japan. I just want to make a kind of overview about what we have seen in the last 2 years. And I will tell you again.
Let's look at in the last 12 months, sir.
Okay, in the last 12 months, it rolls over to this year. And you will bear with me that at the center of this government, the president said it's not an economic war that Nigeria will not benefit from any devaluation. And he has been proved right. And then on the other hand, you have the central bank that appears to be working for the capitalists and the looters of this economy without any apology. He devalued for 25% before the handover of government to this government. And further, they valued it. Every devaluation comes up to about 45%. And knowing fully that the masses will not benefit, the economy will not benefit. The president said, well, import the economy, import everything that we use in this, but you experts, particularly on the media, the capitalists sponsor a lot of programs saying no, unless we increase the petrol price. They say when they increase petrol price, there will be competition and both things will fall down. We are now back to this square one. And now I'm saying that the issue of Nigeria is created by the so-called experts without any apologies.
Thank
I
you.
did economics up to university level, reading Samuel that's made, and we don't have the kind of economic kind of market.
Thank you, Benson Adeoye. Quickly, Dr. Adeoye, this opinion of Benson Adeoye, there are many groups of Nigerians who believe it, that the central bank and some government economic policies is being tied to some external group of foreign dictators, and that's all some powerful Nigerians to benefit from. Can you let's have your opinion on the matter?
Well,
People will say it's IMF.
this is a personal opinion of the caller. But then we need to look at this, that this is a country that is a sovereign nation. So no country should dictate to us. Nevertheless, because of poor economic structure, you depend on certain bodies internationally. And so it's like this popular saying that he who pays the piper, they take the tune. If you are in crisis and this organization that want to give you money, to give you relief,
the only one who can help you out.
They will give you conditions. That is done all over the world. And even when bank is lending you, they give you conditions that you have to tie your sales to them. So that largely can be in place. But nevertheless, we should not be fooled all the time. As a people, we need to sit down and decide what we want for ourselves. There are some countries that they will not allow certain things to come into their country. They will not allow certain things to leave that country. So we can take a decision on what we want. Now, he also mentioned that the experts are the problem. I really don't think so. I disagree on that. We are not the problem. In fact, we are still surviving today because of the few experts that are in existence.
There's no country, there's no good that you won't need experts to guide you. That seems to be a natural thing, really. All right, we have somebody waiting.
Shall we do?
Morning.
Hello?
Morning.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you, sir.
This is Kavadino Rugin, efficiency.
Thank you.
Calling from here in Abeokuta. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning.
Sir, this stocking of a dollar in septic tank, storing it in houses, in sockaway, this and that. Is this not contributing to the scarcity of dollar and by extension increase the foreign exchange rate? And two, sir, our government is not helping us. Some 2 weeks ago, we had it in the news that some 2 guys, they invented a vehicle that is not using petrol. We did not hear anything the government is doing to encourage those guys. We did not hear anything concerning the government effort on it. Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Chienye, good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Adeoye, I greet you. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning too.
Yes, I am Wahid. I'm calling from Abeokuta. I want to sincerely appreciate your submission this morning. You have dealt with a question posed to you with all sense of responsibility and without bias. I want to appreciate you.
Thank you.
Having said that, Doctor, Nigeria is a peculiar country. We have our peculiarities. We have our issues. That nothing we will do in Nigeria that will not have our blood, our steam in need compared to other countries. There are some things that will work in other countries that if you come to Nigeria here, it will not work. Considering that peculiarity I'm talking about, including our people, including Nigerians. You said in the course of this program that Nigeria is mono economy. We all agree that we only depend on oil. We all agree that we need to diversify. And this administration came in and said, "Oh, let us diversify." I want to ask you a question: is it at the moment we diversify the economy, let's say agriculture, that we are going to have the result? What is the responsibility or the role of Nigerians, the people, the masses, in this issue we are talking about, in this issue of diversification? That is number one. But two, now you said if you want to borrow, if we should only borrow for capital expenditure, but not for recurrent expenditure. But how do a leader, like maybe president, governor, or whatever, strike the balance between the crown of the people and what is expected of such leader? What I'm saying is that some people are now saying, let us borrow and pay salary and not stop this borrowing money to do capital projects. How do the leader strike that balance? Thank you. Good morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Yeah, Johnson Olufatuki is my name, calling from Abeokuta.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let me first appreciate the doctor for very comprehensive and detailed explanation given. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
I want to call your attention to one fact
that you really dwelt on, and that is the role of commercial banks and the private sector and assessing loans. I want to let you know, even apart from the challenge in the interest rate, to assess loan becomes difficult, if not impossible now. You can talk to any bank official, they will tell you they are not encouraged to give loan. That's a serious problem. And it's as a result of the TBN guidelines. Secondly, the government is, from my own observation, the government is only giving lip service to economic re-engineering. I don't think government have been serious in addressing this. They are only giving lip service. They are not serious about it. My question now is, with this your position, your experience, your exposure, I'm sure you have done a lot of research and a lot of papers that have been put to some government around all the officials in making suggestions all the way forward. What has any government or the official responded to your suggestions? That is to let us know whether there's any government that even feels at all.
You need to start wrapping up, sir.
They should have people like you, and they are not.
Thank you, sir.
For the messages via the shortcut dial, we have a security alert here from Pastor Adewale. Fulani headsmen attacked two villages, Ayodo and Araromi, around Ohori, part of Ogun State. The house, properties and farmland were burnt while the villagers fled to Republic of Benin. Please, they need security intervention before headsmen take over the place.
Alright, Ohori, that's around the Yoruba North. Local government with an alert about headsmen invading or attacking
the
villages. So those in that axis, please, you can do something about that.
Financial and monetary woes, the bane of national survival and prosperity. Since the advent of IMF, which induced Structural Adjustment Program SAP in 1986, Nigeria's financial and monetary systems have suffered their abuses and privations. Spurious financial engineering mercantilism has displaced the carcass of Naira and Kobo as legal tenders, with major foreign currencies in monumental national crisis clamoring for resolution. That's a message from Cosmos, from People's Center here in Abeokuta. In addition to the reasons for high cost of lending rate, there is high cost of operation. All the banks in the country operate generators on average of 12 hours a day. The implication is apart from fueling, and these generators are replaced often. Again, these generators are imported, which equally put pressure on exchange rates. So if only the power issue is solved, there would be a great change, but government is insensitive. Kenny Additional from Ashiru sent in that message. What is ICANN generally doing on the scrapping of management science courses from specialized universities? That's a question from Honorable Mankos.
Honorable Mankos, don't worry. That's out of the bar. But throwing work on what do you call it? Except he chooses to
answer that.
Answer that.
The center of development in any nation is the tertiary institution, industries, and the government. What plan has been in place to reduce the inflation rate in the country and day-to-day loss of employment by Nigerians? Honorable Mankot also sent in that message. Doctor, please, at what point did we get it wrong in this country that salaries are owned government? Kayode from Randa sent in that one. And then we have an empty message here from someone. And then switching over to the tweets via our Twitter handle. We have a reactive government instead of a proactive one, in my opinion. That is the reason we are suffering fuel crisis now, and dollar is still relatively scarce. Yemi Da Vinci tweeted. Still, Yemi Da Vinci, I am of the opinion that we should have spent the money used to defend the Naira and presently paying subsidy on petrol to build infrastructure. That is the best way to spend ourselves out of the recession. Dr. Adeoye, what do you think will be the effect on our economy if we redenominate our currency like Ghana did, and that's about a decade ago, and Professor Sulubu wanted to do that. I agree with everything that Dr. Adeoye has said regarding our economy. CBN has constituted itself to be a clog in the wheel of development. Dr. Henry Boyo has been saying this for decades, but no one seems to be listening. Billionaire Ajisha said the federal government should focus more on economic growth that will foster GDP and GNP. God bless Nigeria. Adenekon Oluwaseun also tweeted, lastly, if you are to score this government in our economy, what percentage would you score them? It is rather unfortunate how most governments overlook the negative impact of external debt and focus only on the positive. What can I, as a citizen, do? That's a question from Adenekon Oluwaseun. Then more tweets, Dolani Robots. The methodology is running governance should critically look into so we can have a good socio-economic background. Both the federal government and state governments should ensure infrastructure are in place on regular basis. Then our unemployment rates will reduce. Our leading rate keeps increasing just because CBN decided to sell the treasury bills to bank at the rate of 17%. Those were tweets from Dolani Robots. Engineer Oje also tweeted, it is expected of the federal government to ensure that their policies, strategies and programs are effectively implemented and monitored in order to develop the economy as well as increase the lot of Nigerians. Long live Nigeria and God bless Rock City FM. Compliments. Thank you. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, on Friday said that in spite of Nigeria's exit from recession, the economy of the country is still vulnerable. What more do we need to hear?
No, you need to also add, that's not the end of that statement of IMF. Yes, vulnerable, but they said there are serious signs that the economy will improve in 2018. Please add that. That's what the full statement of that IMF is saying.
Better days ahead. Our present experience so far has said it all. God help us all. Which way, Nigeria? Politicians, I beg pity for us. And then we also have the security alert from Kunle Gab that has been announced. Okay, can we have the resource person react to
so many of them?
Yes.
So let's see the ones you...
Some are similar. I have about 50 items here. Let me take them one by one, and then I'll be brief. On the increase in our debt and borrowing, how do we manage to reduce? Well, if you are earning less than what you are spending, it means you will borrow.
You have to borrow.
So that's the major issue. There are a lot of angles at which we can look at this. We have House of Rep, we have the Senate. Whereas a country like us, you have just one, peculiar to our country and not two. Even though we copy our presidential system from the US, but looking at our situation, we may have to really sit down and think about this. But that's not the only issue. I said there are many angles. So when you spend more than you generate, you have to borrow. Somebody mentioned cash stacked in tanks and in some places. Is it not connected to the scarcity? Well, that is the aspect of corruption, and I don't have authority to speak about that. The EFCC, the ICPC, they have that responsibility. Somebody talk about diversification. Yes, that's key. We need to diversify, go into other areas apart from oil. But like I said earlier, those that will diversify the economy are the people, and they need money. They need the enabling environment to do that. So, and that we've talked about. Somebody said, I mentioned that it's good to borrow to do capital project. It's not good to borrow to pay salaries, because what it means is that you are not even making enough money to pay your, expenses, variable cost. In accounting, we have fixed costs, we have variable cost. If you incur money on infrastructure, it's actually to grow your capacity to earn more. But if your variable cost is on the increase, then you are in trouble. So that is key issue. But then, if somebody has worked for you, you must ensure that that person is paid. He is not interested in where you get the money. Just make sure you pay him. So on the part of the worker, I sympathize with them. For those states that didn't get their salary, they can ask for anything. Somebody said that the Senate said they are not going to pass the budget because 2017 was not fully implemented. Yes, that's part of the crisis. Two wrongs does not make a right. If 2017 was not fully implemented, there are two things that can cause that. The time the budget was passed, and then do we have it cash backed? So that's an issue that we need to look at. Well, if we don't pass the budget, then we're in trouble because the executive, they can't do anything. And I will expect that the budget of 2018 is actually passed in 2017, but we can't achieve that anymore. The other person talked about well, the issue of power. Power is key. I've said that before. If we don't have power, there are so many sectors. I remember there was a time I was in London Zoo and I saw an amusement park and I said, look, we have to bring this to Nigeria. And I called a friend, look, we are going to bring this to Abeokuta, my state. And you know, I tried to look for the people who invented this equipment. I got their contact and I said, let's bring this to Nigeria. And I called this friend and he said, bros, how do you intend to power it? It was as if they pour ice block on my body. And he said, if you use generator to power, the cost of diesel, as you put it on, you are going to hike the price. And then nobody is going to patronize you. That was the end of that project. Dead on arrival. So power is key. Somebody talked about scrapping management sciences from university. That's under education, and I don't think that is in place. Most universities still run accounting, they still run B&B and the rest. Well, that's not what we're discussing today. Another person said government is reactive. I'm not in a position to say that. This is not a place where we criticize government. They are doing their best. The best may not be good for us. So, and that's why we have the Citizen Forum to raise issues. But of course, it's not about criticizing the government that the nation can move forward. You have to, support them, give counsel, and say, let's do it this way. This is going to be the result. And if you are not selfish and they know that you are sincere, I think they will listen to you. Somebody talked about how do you score this government. I cannot score this government because I don't have all the details to score them. Before you can score somebody, I need your continuous assessment.
There's the marking
so the marking scheme is not here yet. Yes, somebody said, just like the IMF said, there is a better days ahead. 2018, for me, I'm excited about what is going to happen in 2018 for two reasons. One, it's a pre-election year. For the people that have not done well, whether at state level, local government, or anywhere, they are going to seek election. So they will do everything possible to do something.
To impress.
Maybe they build health center for you, they renovate your schools, do all sorts of things to make sure that they get re-elected. The challenge, which is the second aspect, which is very dangerous, is that for those who have performed before, they are likely to get distracted, trying to do primaries in their parties, and so there will be a lot of distraction in 2018. And so if we don't rise up, there may not be performance in some states in the coming year. So I think those are...
Alright, so let's just add about two calls to
wrap it
this.
up with the messages.
The messages. Or do we have messages first?
No, let's take the calls.
Okay, somebody's ready. Yes, sir.
Good morning, my name is Sabanet from Apaju.
Thank you.
I don't use the time you should not criticize the government.
Hello? Hello, Isa? Oh, okay.
We lost that call.
We lost that call. Okay. Hello, morning.
Hello?
Good morning.
Good morning. We can't barely hear you. You need to speak up.
I'm Prince Ojo.
Thank you. Yes.
Are you hearing me now?
We
Yes,
can
we
hear
can.
you.
I bring the guests in the house.
Thank you.
Nigeria is blessed, but the leaders of this country is the problem of the country itself. We have always been having fantastic budgets, but implementation has always been the problem all these years. When can we have a breakthrough? This can never come when we don't change our mentality. Nigeria is not working as one country. A country divided against itself can never know progress.
Okay.
Good morning.
Thank you.
That's the last call.
That'll be the last call.
Yes, messages.
Okay, for the messages via our shortcut dial, we got this one from Kayode Olumide. Dr. Gbenga, there is no way to how an accountant can look at how a dollar would go for a naira and believe it is possible. How? He had not been able to note that our naira is grossly undervalued and that no economy of Nigeria can be solved without addressing this issue, coupled with this military constitution we are running and claiming we are amending. I need your attention or take on this. Kayode Olumide
We
sent
just know that naira undervalue. I don't understand. Maybe you will explain whatever. Let us go on with the message.
Okay, then we have this one from Mr. Fash from Elega. For how long are we going to continue in analyzing the problem of Nigeria? Rather, we should face our leaders. Mr. Fash from Elega
We'll
is
continue
suggesting
to address it until it is solved. That's straightforward. Until it is solved. If it takes 10 years, we will continue. If it takes 10 days, we should continue.
We'll continue to hammer that until we get the change we desire. Okay, let him wrap it up.
Right, Dr. Gbenga.
Okay, somebody talked about implementation of the budget. There are two things that affect budget implementation. Is funding. The budget might be approved, you may not have the fund, especially in a deficit budget situation. So the second thing is the time of approval. When the budget is passed, probably May, June, you have 4 months gone, then there's no way you can catch up to implement the budget fully. So that's one. The other person was, somebody mentioned that do we need to redenominate our currency? That's not necessary for our country. If we work hard, we improve on our GDP, export, naira will continue to get strengthened on daily basis. And I'm optimistic. I see this country in the next few years having naira to exchange for dollar at 200, and then moving forward about 150, going back to where we were coming from, and then we can improve. The issue of the denomination is not what we need to do now. Somebody said we've been analyzing, we should face the government, and then I think the other caller was saying I said we should not criticize the government. I think he's getting me wrong. And then somebody asked whether I've been able to advise government at one time or the other. Those are private discussions that we cannot be talking on radio. At the various institute level, Chartered Institute of Taxation, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, we have members representing us. I'm one of the people on the board, and we have our role that we play to government, and we say, let's do it this way, let's do it that way. If you see somebody want to advise you and is bringing cutlass and machete and gun, will you wait and listen to that person? So, and that's what I mean by not just criticizing and opposing government. We make constructive criticism and then we advise, not calling people names. Somebody said naira is undervalued. Well, I think that's correct, because exchanging naira at 363 is quite unacceptable to me, because I believe that this nation is stronger than what our
okay, today, because we just have less than 2 minutes really to do with that last statement. You believe naira under this trillion naira. If everything you've said comes to play, how long will it take Nigeria to have a stronger, much more vibrant economy?
Wow. Just
10 years, like somebody will take it 10 years, 10 days, 10 months?
Wait, 10 years is too long. 10 years, many people will die within 10 years. If you are 70 years old and you are going to live for 75, then you'll be gone by then. But if we get our, policy right, I think within the next 5 years, Nigeria should be a great nation.
Okay, that's good news, at least for those of you or for those of us who are still we are not at the boarding.
We are not at the fashion lounge.
Who are still young and still believe in Nigeria.
We are not at the departure lodge, like Joseph Bakri we always say. They are at the departure lodge.
Dr. Chienye call it vanishing generation.
So, all right, Dr. Gbenga Adeoye, I must honestly appreciate you. It's been another hour of education and information. Of course, Dr. Adeoye is a member of the board of Chartered Institute of Transition of Nigeria, fellow of ICANN, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, and of course,
not board of CIT,
ICANN Transition Board. ICANN Transition Board. And of course, Akasi also holds a PhD degree in what we've discussed this morning. We say thank you, Merry Christmas to you and your family. And of course, to everybody who've joined us. Dele Ayodo is my name. I say God bless you all, God bless Nigeria, and God bless Rock City.